All right, here's our review video for week 3. Like I told you in class, I'm going to show you the answers, and then I'm just going to talk about specifically the ones that are highlighted in yellow. Those are the ones I'm really going to focus on when I do the video. So first, let's just check our answers. So we talked about number 2, number 3, All right, so let's start by talking through a few of these. So on question 5, I just did a rotation and a translation. I don't really think there's any other way you could have gotten this problem, but if we do this, so rotation 90 degrees counterclockwise. So remember, count our draw our swastikas, but don't do that. So over 1, up 1, and you can kind of think about it like you're walking along this path, right? Over 1, up 1, so over 1, up 1. And then if I do that with the O, that's over 4, up 2. So same path, over 4 to the left 2. And then over 3, up 4, over 3, up 4. All right, and that's going to get me my second image. And then I'm trying to get all the way to the prime. So once I get this triangle, then I'm going to start counting what needed to have come next. So next for that was a translation, and then I'm just moving to the left 3 and up 1, which is why I did x minus 3 and x plus 1. Remember, if you don't want to memorize these rules, like I don't, you can just map points. So for instance, O was at 4, 2 when it started. All right, and then it moved up here to negative 2, 4. So I just thought about those coordinates and then created the rule negative yx. All right, if we look at question 6, you may not have had to do this question in this order, so you don't necessarily have to rotate and then reflect, and that's true of any of these. You don't have to do them in the order that I have done, but they should have happened in that order at some point. So I said rotate counterclockwise 90 degrees. So counterclockwise is going to put me up here in this first quadrant. So I did 3 and 1, so 3 and 1. 3 and I think that's 6. No, 3 and 5. So 3 and 5. I'm struggling to count right now. And then A is going to be, let's see, 5 and 5. So 5 and 5 for A, which gave me a triangle that looked like this. So that's closer to what I needed. And then I had to reflect it so that it was the correct orientation. So then I'm just counting equal distances across the y-axis here. And again, I'm just kind of picking a point and mapping out its path to come up with these coordinate rules down here. So for instance, let's track the path. I started to say D. I don't want to do that one. Let's track the path of N because it's got some easier numbers to deal with. So if we track the path of N here, N starts at 3, negative 1, 3, negative 1, and then when it rotates 90 degrees, it ends up at 1, 3. So notice that's where I'm getting the negative yx for that first rule. And then I'm reflecting it across the y-axis, which is going to move it to -1, 3, which is where I get that next rule, negative xy. And then I move it down 2, which lands its final place at -1, 1, which is me subtracting 2 from the y. So I really think if you're struggling with how to get the coordinates, if you'll pick one coordinate and track it all the way through, it may help you write these rules for whatever series of transformations are occurring. Okay, so here remember that lines should make you think about reflections and rotations. Obviously, you're going to think about rotations. So I've just picked a few of these to talk about. Question 1 here are 4 lines of symmetry. So we can go, straight down, pretend that this is straight and going through that center dot, straight across. I can also go diagonally in either direction. So those are my 4 lines. Pretend that they're drawn better. And then if we talk about our degrees of rotation, and we got to think about how many ways can I turn this like puzzle piece, right, so that it fits in the same spot. So I could turn it a 90-degree rotation, right? Each of these turns could occur. So if I turn it 90 degrees, that works. And then I want to count that same turn all the way up until I get to 260, which is how I'm getting 90 and then 180 and then 270. All right, question 3. The lines here, so notice that these 2 end caps on the left and the right look a little bit different. There's like a curve to them. So the only lines of symmetry we have here are down the middle and the middle there. All right, we can't like fold any other way or it's not going to match up correctly. So then if we talk about our angles of rotation, the only way to like fill this same space is to rotate it completely 180 degrees. So that's the only angle of rotation there. All right, and then our last question is 9 down here at the bottom. Lines of rotation, there are none here. So if these flags wouldn't have been on here, we could have drawn a few different lines, right? We could have probably drawn 5, I think, going through. But because the flags are there, it's going to mess up our lines of symmetry. And then our rotation, you can turn this 5 different ways, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways for it to fit in the same spot. So we're just doing 360 divided by 5 to get 72. And then I'm just counting up by 72 as many times as I can until I get to 360, which is where I'm coming up with those 4 angles of rotation. All right, so let's look at this first one. So let's just talk about rotations. So a few key things here. Remember that 90 degrees means 1 quadrant of rotation, and counterclockwise, you may want to like draw yourself an arrow or just think before you start the problem, where is it going to end up? Right? If this goes counterclockwise, it should end up in the 3rd quadrant. So you may want to draw that arrow or just note for yourself the direction so you don't accidentally go the wrong way tomorrow. Okay, so we're going to start at the origin, and notice on this first one what I've done. So I have counted, I'm kind of putting myself in these shoes. If this was a path I was walking, I would walk 4 steps forward and then turn 2 to my right to get to S. So same thing, 4 steps forward, and then if you're walking along this path, this is 2 to your right. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing for R and the same thing for S. All right. 2 forward, and I don't even remember how many that is. All right, and then we're going to match that 2 forward and then that same amount to get you to R. So you're just going to be drawing these arrows, and just notice that whatever direction you draw the L, right, it will always be like this L shape. Whatever direction you draw that, it should be that same kind of orientation or that same, I don't really know how to word that. But it should be the same in all the other quadrants. Okay, and now I think our next one here is going to be on question 18. So here we're reflecting over the y-axis. So remember that reflections are the same kind of distance across, and we're going to count perpendicularly. So I'm counting to this y-axis here. So I just counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for H. So I'm going to repeat that pattern on the other side. And I guess I'm counting backwards, but H is 5 away. And then repeat the same process for J. J is 4 counts to our line of symmetry, so then 4 counts on the other side. All right, same for I. All right, and these last two, I picked 21 not because I necessarily think it's any more complicated than some of the others, because you may have noticed that a lot of these are reflect over x and then y, or y and then x. But number 21 looks very similar no matter which direction you put it, so I wanted to make special note of the resulting image and where the coordinates are and how they're labeled. So you may have drawn an additional spot in here, an additional transformation. So I just have the final transformation that you would get if you did both of these things. So I'm going to just start with letter U. So we're going to go over the y-axis. So that's, I'm going to count 2, so 2 on the other side. And then over the x-axis, down 1, so down 1 more to get to my new U double prime. All right, so then if I take t, I'm going to count 2, so then 2 over. And this time it's down, it's 4 away. So I'm going to count 4 on the other side. S, same idea. Switch colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away. So 6 on the other side. And then I think this one is 5, so then 5 on the other side. And then V, same idea. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 away from the y-axis. And then 2 away from the x-axis, so 2 on the other side. So notice, I'm color coding for us here. You really need to make sure that you label everything correctly and that you're mapping your points out, because you need to make sure that corresponding points stay labeled correctly, or you're going to get some things counted off tomorrow. It is okay with me if you draw this intermediate transformation here. That is not a problem at all, and I think some of you are actually going to prefer to do that so that you can check off that you are doing everything correctly and keeping everything in the corresponding order. All right, and then question 22. Reflection over the x-axis and then translated 9 units to the left. So same idea. I'm just going to pick corresponding points to map them over. So let's start with W. We're going to reflect over the x, so that's 1 away. It's going to get me right here. And then like I said, I did this all at once, so that's reflection over the x. And then I translated 9 units to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, same for the x. X is 4 away from the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4 away. And then 9 to the left. 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. All right, and then the same with the y. I'm going to count to the x-axis, which I think is 6. So 6 up here. And then I'm going to count 9 to the left, which is going to get me there. So remember, I am perfectly okay with you coming up with this triangle in between. And in fact, it's probably smart for you to be labeling that triangle so that, again, you keep everything in its corresponding order. Which brings me to a point. I have made a mistake here because my answer, so this is wrong. This should be y double prime, and this should be w double prime. So hopefully you caught that and you recognize that I was wrong there. If you need help with anything, make sure you come to tutoring tomorrow. Also, take a minute to just glance over your last tests and see if there's anything that might be on there for review that you need to make sure you have studied. We will also have some of those counter examples on your test tomorrow, but I think you all are feeling much better about that.